Title driver with a secret. They told a mother to start planning a funeral for her 7-day-old baby, and I was the driver who heard it through the glass. The doctor's voice was calm the way people get when they've already decided for you. I stood there with a thermos in my hand and a secret beating in my pocket, like a second heart, and I thought, if I say nothing, I'm part of this. My name is Marcus Reed. If you've ever stood on the wrong side of a door listening to people with titles, decide how much hope you're allowed. You know the flavor of that moment, metallic and dry like a battery on your tongue. I worked for the Whitakers, a family with a house up on the ridge and a view of Brighton Harbor that could make you forgive almost anything. I drove Lauren, the mom, to every appointment, every midnight scare, every time hope flickered and went out again. The baby's name was Mia, 7 days old and already fighting harder than most grown men I know. The doctor said words like catastrophic and syndrome and timeline, and I nodded like a driver, not like someone who once wore a white coat with his name stitched neat on the chest. Let me say that part out loud. I was supposed to be a physician. I did the thing, the classes, the exams, the lab coat selfies my grandmother cried over. Then came the calls that start kind and end with, "We'll be in touch." Then came the interviews where my story was inspiring, but my face wasn't the brochure they wanted their donors to see. I told myself it was a season, then it was a year, then it was a new life. You know what I mean? Bills don't care about dreams. I took shifts in an ambulance, hours in a clinic, and when those dried up, I took a job behind a wheel because staying close to the hospital felt like staying close to the person I used to be. One more thing. During an army physical, they flagged my blood. O negative with a rare antigen profile you can't fake. The doctor who told me whistled and said, "Kid, you're lightning in a bottle." I put that paper in a drawer, closed it, and kept moving, because fate doesn't pay rent. Then Mia arrived. The neonatal ICU was bright, and too clean, and too loud, with quiet noises, beeps and breaths, and the hum of what might save you and what might not. On the other side of the glass, Lauren had her hands pressed to the incubator, like maybe love could cross plastic. The attending Dr. Halden practiced careful empathy like he'd been graded on it. "There's nothing more we can do," he said, and I swear the hallway got colder. Not today, I thought. Not if I have anything to say about it. So I did the thing you're not supposed to do when you're the help. I stepped toward the desk and asked to speak to the doctor. The nurse didn't look up at first, then she gave me the scan. Suit skin posture. The human algorithm that tells people how to file you. "Family only," she said, handing me a pen to sign a log, not a door to walk through. I sat. I waited. When Lauren came out with the same face I'd seen on day 1, day 3, day 5, I stood. "Ma'am," I said, voice steady because steady is all I could afford. "There's something I might be able to do for your daughter." She blinked, trying to see past the job. "Marcus," she started, careful, already building a fence. The doctors were clear. It would take a family donor. And even then, she didn't finish. I reached into my jacket and pulled the yellowed paper I'd kept too long. "I know what they said," I told her. "But would you let me show this to Dr. Halden and ask for the tests that actually decide this?" That was the first crack. Not in her in the day. We walked to his office past framed diplomas and a window that looked onto a courtyard where trees tried to make sense of concrete. He took the page like he was reading a speeding ticket. "Mr. Reed," he said, friendly, "the way you are to a person you're sending back to the lobby. Transplant is not about blood type alone. There are histocompatibility issues, size protocols. Protocols, the gold-plated word. Order the HLA typing." I said, polite and direct. Run a cross match. If I'm not a fit, I'll get out of your way. If I am, then you and your committee have a different conversation. He looked at me long enough to realize I wasn't guessing. Where did you learn those terms? He asked, and that was the first moment he really saw me. I read, I said, and left it there. They drew blood. They ran labs. They made us wait. I drove Lauren home the car so quiet, it felt like we were sneaking through our own lives. I parked by the water and watched the horizon pretend it was stable. Then the call came. You're a match, Halden said, and I had to put my head on the steering wheel and breathe like a person who didn't want to break. Perfect, he added, like the universe was in a generous mood. We'll schedule once the ethics committee clears the donor. And then, the second call. I'm sorry, he said. The committee has concerns. Concerns. That word again. They said power imbalance. They said possible coercion. They said appearance. Translation. You're the driver and we don't trust why you're helping. Wrong move, Ong. If it were you, what would you have done? Take the no like a gentleman, trust the process that just handed a mother a funeral, go stand by the car while the beeping slows down. Or make a call that could blow your life up on purpose. I called an old friend, Elena Park. She answered the cadence of a busy floor behind her sanitizer pumps and sneakers on tile. We were cadaver lab partners back when my future still fit in a single sentence. Marcus, you disappeared, she said. You better be calling to brag. I'm calling because a 7-day-old is about to be a story. I said words clipped because I didn't have breath to waste. I'm an O negative with a rare antigen profile. I'm a match. The committee said no. Motive concerns. I need a surgeon who sees a patient, not a headline. Elena didn't hesitate. Riverton Children's. I can have a room and a team. But Marcus, are you licensed right now? No, I said bare truth, but this isn't about my title. It's about getting a little person to a place where you can save her. I can keep her stable for the drive. I can be the donor. I can follow your orders without blinking. You'll need a transfer signed against medical advice, she said, already moving. And you'll be carrying legal risk that could crush your ribs. My ribs have carried worse, I said. Text me the intake. Now the twist you didn't see coming, if you only know me as the guy who opens doors. I went to Lauren's house and told her who I actually was. I trained as a physician, I said, soft, but not apologizing. I didn't get the residency that would have given me the letters, so I took another road. I don't need you to trust my past. I need you to trust my plan. She stared past me at the photos down the hallway. Birthdays, ocean days, things that make life feel promised. Why didn't you say it sooner, she asked. Because people like me are easier to accept when we're helpful than when we're qualified, I said. Yeah, that happened. She ran a hand through her hair, that stunned gesture people do when the truth sits down on their couch and puts its feet up. If something happens to her, she whispered. It will be on me, I said. And if nothing changes and we stay here, what then? She closed her eyes, opened them, and found her spine. Dawn, she said. We leave at dawn. I turned a black SUV into a mobile ICU in a parking garage at 4 a.m. Oxygen tank battery, backups infusion, pump portable monitor tape, more tape a prayer. I don't have words for. A nurse who knew exactly what I was doing looked away at exactly the right moment. At 5:11 we rolled. The road out of Brighton cuts along the water, then into pine, then flattens into a silence that tests your belief in distance. Every 2 hours, we pulled into a rest stop surrounded by truckers and vending machines and people who had no idea our entire world sat beeping in the back seat. I checked lines, listened to breaths, counted heartbeats with 2 fingers and a promise. Lauren sat with Mia whispering bargains to the headliner. At the third stop, she asked me if I was scared. Of course, I said, and I'm busy. She smiled, broken and brave. Why do you talk like you belong in there? She asked. Because I do, I said, and I let that hang between us like a bridge. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Riverton Children's rises out of the city like a ship built from glass and grit. Elena met us at the curb in blue scrubs and a bun that meant, "Don't waste my time." "Ms. Whitaker," she said, taking charge of the air, "we're going to move fast. Minor sedation labs, imaging list status upgrade. To me, you'll be the donor, but you're not touching a scalpel in my OR. Hospital counsel would combust." "I came here to be useful, not famous," I said. She smirked, a rare thing, and squeezed my arm. "That's why I picked you in lab," she said, then turned and ran. I signed a donor consent that read like a list of ways to ruin your week. Risk of this, risk of that, risk of becoming a story someone else tells at dinner parties. I initialed every line. Elena looked me in the eyes. "You don't have to prove anything," she said. "You've been proving things to people who didn't deserve it for years." "This isn't about them," I said. "It's about a mouth that should be pink." In another building in another city, Dr. Halden learned we had moved the patient, and he said the words people say when control slips. Unauthorized liability consequences. In Riverton, Elena said clamp perfusion flow. The transplant was the kind they make diagrams for, exacting delicate a puzzle you solve with hands that have done the work when no one was watching. A piece of my liver, a lattice of vessels, a thread of hope. 4 hours where time didn't ask permission. When Elena reconnected flow, the numbers rose hesitant like deer stepping back into a clearing. No fanfare, just life deciding to stay. They wheeled me to recovery and tied me to a bed with wires and beeps I trusted more than any committee. I asked to see Mia, and they laughed, then let me sit up anyway, because sometimes rules step aside for the person they were made to protect. Her lips were pink. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just the color you earn after a storm. Lauren reached for my hand and filled both palms with it, like she was making sure I was real. "I'm sorry," she said, and it landed in the space behind my ribs, heavy and necessary. "For not seeing you." "You saw what you were trained to see," I said. "Learning past it hurts. You did it anyway." She laughed and cried at the same time, the sound of a mother remembering how to breathe. If it were you, I asked the camera in my head, what would you have said to me right then? By day 2, the story had started walking around town on its own legs. A reporter wanted words like hero and miracle and underdog, and I kept redirecting to patient and team and chance. In the old hospital, statements were drafted about process. At Riverton, board members had meetings about precedent and optics, because even a good deed gets measured against a spreadsheet somewhere. I get it. Systems are built because someone got hurt once and someone else swore never again. But here's the thing. Sometimes a system designed to prevent harm forgets to measure the harm happening right now. Do you think that's fair? I healed fast because I'm stubborn, and because Elena kept me honest. On day 6, I shuffled down the hall slow and proud, and a nurse with a half sleeve of tattoos handed me a coffee and said, "You did good, Doc," and I pretended I wasn't going to cry about a paper cup. Lauren started bringing me coffee the way I like it, which is how you tell someone you plan to know them for real. We made jokes you can only make after you walk through a fire, edge-of-the-bed humor, relief humor, the kind that takes its shoes off and stays a while. Then one afternoon, the phone rang, and Lauren put it on speaker because hiding was over. Ms. Whitaker Halden said, trying to sound like he was still at the wheel, "We need to discuss the irregular transfer." "We're fine," Lauren said. "The surgery was successful." He said things about liability and chain of care. She said one thing: "You made the wrong call and I let you. That was my last mistake." Then she hung up and looked at me with a small new smile, the kind you wear when you realize your voice doesn't need permission. "I used to be very polite," she said. "I think I'm done." "Welcome to the noisy side," I said. "The view is better." 6 months later, Mia ran through the Whitaker garden with cheeks like summer. The house felt different. Less museum, more home, the kind of place where people use the good plates on Tuesdays. Ethan, the dad who kept chasing flights, started chasing bedtime instead. They asked me to be Mia's godfather and to sign a piece of paper that would let me stand where a father stands if the world ever turned cruel. I went to my car and let that hit me in private, because some gifts deserve quiet. Riverton offered me a job that sounded fancy and felt simple: pediatric transplant program coordinator, not director. I didn't want a corner office. I wanted to be in rooms where hands do the thing hands do when they are trained and trusted and seen. Do you want the neat ending? The one where the old hospital apologizes, and the committee admits bias, and the board changes policy because one driver had the nerve to say no to no. That's not what happened. They posted a statement about policy and process. Halden moved sideways into teaching. People congratulated themselves quietly for handling the optics. I ran into him once by a fountain outside a building with too much glass. "Mr. Reed," he said, and stopped, realizing how small that sounded now. "Doctor," I answered, because playing keep away with titles is the same small game that burned me, and I'm not interested. He started to say something that could have been apology or defense. I lifted a hand. "We made different calls," I said. "One of us would have been wrong on paper. The other would have been wrong in person." He nodded like a man paying a bill he didn't want to owe, and that was that. Here's the part that will make some of you mad, and I respect that. Living donor programs exist to protect donors from pressure. Power is real, money is loud, and people can be coerced in ways they don't even notice. Those guardrails matter. So what happens when the donor is the one pushing, when the imbalance points the other way, when a man who's been told to stay small decides to break a rule with his own body, and it works? Are we okay with that because the ending was good, or do we only bless the path we would have taken if we'd been the ones in charge of the room? If it were you, what would you have done? I don't have a law for this. I have a scar. A baby's laugh, a friend who says I still owe her tacos for life, a job that lets me be useful the way I always meant to be. I have a memory of myself, smaller and careful, standing by a car while decisions happened without me, and I have the version who finally stepped forward and said, "Ma." Those two men still talk inside my chest. Some days the careful one wins because rules exist for a reason. Some days the other one wins because breathing does too. Let me leave you here where you get to tell me if I crossed a line or finally drew one. Were we right to push, or did the happy ending trick us into blessing something reckless? Have you seen a system protect itself and call that safety while a person paid the bill in real time? Have you ever been underestimated so thoroughly that you learned to make it a tool, and if you did, what did it cost you? Drop your take in the comments. Go deep. Be honest. Keep it respectful. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what's broken, where you live, and who fixed it anyway. Tell me if you'd have taken the no or started the car. If this story meant something to you, hit like, hit subscribe, share it with the one person who needs to hear that competence and love are louder than protocol when a life is on the line. I'll be in the comments with you listening, learning, and stubborn as ever.